Hello! Welcome back to this series where I'm reasoning the existence of God. In the previous episode, I said I'm a Christian and have a background in science. However, I don't want to go into too much detail about my background. I don't consider myself an authority on any subject, be it science or theology. Also, I don't want you to rely on my own credentials to fortify your arguments, but instead to reason for yourself through the substance of my introspections. My purpose in this series is to share with you what I've learned along the way as a student. We'll first form a list of God's necessary attributes. Last episode, I mentioned this passage from the Bible. Since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes, His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. I don't quote this to try and persuade you. This simply is where I started in my reasoning. When I read this passage, I realized I can infer God's divine attributes from what He has made, namely His creation. And His attributes should be plainly evident to all of us, even to those who are not Christians. If you look online, you can find lists of God's traditional attributes. These usually include things like God is omnipotent, omnipresent, omnibenevolent, and so on. These lists are formed from traditional religious views about God by people who already believe in God. In this study, I wish to avoid relying on traditional theologies. Instead, I want to form a list from the point of view of someone who never heard the idea of God or gods. This is a daunting task, since I've always had a Christian worldview. So I'll be relying on your objective thoughts as well to improve this hypothesis. Also, I want to use a logical perspective to the best of my ability, and consider the universe as a unit of measure for God, so to speak. In the end, this new list will have some attributes similar to traditional ones, and some others will be absent completely. However, if we can agree on this list of attributes, then from there we can examine any claims of divinity and see if any so-called gods possess all these properties and abilities. I will minimize this list to only attributes required to create the universe. In this way, if a deity is found who has all these necessary attributes, then we have found the creator of the universe. But if a character is missing any of these, then they would simply be a false god. This process is actually similar to how a biologist might determine what life is. Does it metabolize energy? Does it reproduce? Does it respond to stimulus? It may have all the attributes of life, but not the ability to reproduce. Therefore, it isn't life. So I want to be as logical as possible in reasoning these divine attributes. I feel in any scientific investigation, you should start with your assumptions. It may surprise some of you there's assumptions made in science. In fact, one such philosophical assumption is there's an underlying order to the universe. This would be a necessary assumption because 1, it's based on what we've observed so far, but also, without this belief, there wouldn't be any purpose in doing physics. There wouldn't be a law of gravity because gravity would be different in different places and at different times, and it would be impossible to measure, model, or predict. Here are the assumptions I'm going to make in this study. All logical assumptions made in physics will still apply, except for, of course, the materialist view that the universe began by some natural means, instead of by supernatural being. One other assumption I'm going to make for now is that God is an individual being, is intelligent, and is supernatural. Supernatural simply meaning beyond nature, beyond the universe, and beyond our scope of space and time. Sometime later, I might discuss other first causes, such as quantum fluctuations, if you like. The limitation of the natural sciences is they can only observe nature, that is to say, this universe. Anything outside of this universe, by definition, is impossible to observe. So I'll assume this universe encompasses all of physical space, time, and matter, which can possibly be seen or perceived. There is one other assumption I want to avoid making. From here on, I'm not going to refer to God, but simply as the Creator. Even though I'm a Christian, at this time, I want to avoid saying God, because I feel it unnecessarily implies a being of worship. This would be a whole other study. I want to define the Creator by His creation, not by what I want to believe. I don't want to determine His attributes from mere religious feelings I might have. So let's go back to this biological life example for a moment. Biologists choose a list of attributes for life based on life they've observed here on Earth. Likewise, we need some kind of basis to measure the Creator against. A being that suddenly appears claiming to be God would be an extraordinary event. And there's no basis, no other creator of the universe to test against. However, if the Bible passage is correct, then we can know about Him by what He has made. What I suggest we do is use our knowledge of the universe to measure the Creator. After all, the universe is the biggest thing around, and the Creator would have to have the ability to create it. You may rather think of it this way. If you were going to create the universe, what abilities would you have to have? There are a couple of other questions we need to keep in mind while forming this list of attributes. First, do any of these attributes show a distinction between beings with powerful technology and the Creator with the ability to create the whole universe? Also, I want to consider if these attributes and the evidence for these attributes would be apparent to primitive people who didn't have the knowledge of math and science we have today. You may feel the universe isn't a sufficient measure for the Creator, and I might agree. A better unit of measure may be needed. But for now, this is where I'll start in my thinking. I've thought of a minimum of 5 attributes the Creator must have in order to create the universe. I might be able to reduce this list to 3. The first 3 I can reason from creation. The fourth one I reason from the first 3 attributes. And the last one I infer from the assumptions I've made. I think I've heard opposing arguments to all of these, except for the last one. But I'm not going to share with you this list yet. I'd like to see what you think. My challenge for you is to use the universe as a measuring stick and determine for yourselves what these attributes are. Like in the biological life example, if any God was missing just one of these properties, He wouldn't be the Creator. In the end, we can take this list and evaluate any divine claims made in myth or history. Then we'll see if any of them provide the necessary evidence, so brace yourselves for that. Don't forget to leave your ideas in the comments. I'd like to thank you for sticking with me through this video. Next time, I'll begin discussing the first of these 5 attributes. I'm looking forward to seeing what you say, so let me know. Like last episode, I'd like to end with a few words specifically for Christian believers. I think this was good on the last video, and I might end all episodes this way. If you're ending here, I'd like to go ahead and thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye for now. There are numerous lists of God's attributes out there, and all of them try and list all the aspects of God's nature. I don't want to only challenge atheist beliefs, but our beliefs as well. Typically, these lists of attributes are formed from traditional beliefs held by other Christian believers. In this series, test your own traditionally held beliefs. Jesus says in Mark 7:13, "Thus you've nullified the word of God by your tradition that you've handed down, and you do many things like that." Even if our traditional beliefs happen to be right. But we believe these things because they are traditional. Are we really following the Word of God, or are we following our own desires? It is okay to have questions if we are seeking the answers. Feel free to ask. If I, or someone else, can't provide you with the simple truth, then continue to ask. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. God is capable of providing us with the plain truth. For God isn't a God of confusion, but of peace. 1 Corinthians 14:33. In the end, I hope everyone, whether you are a believer or a skeptic, can see clearly to understand what the truth is. I thank all of you for watching my videos, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye for now.